would have loved to have as many media practitioners as possible, but given the essential protocols and features that define the State House environment, we have been rather constrained. And so I believe that for those of us who are accredited houses that we have in Sierra Leone, and we will utilize the platforms that we have so that whatever we generate from today's press briefing would also be shared with all other ministries that are related to that ministry. That by the time he should be finishing maybe the second year of the second term, we should have reasonably witnessed the massive halt on importation of rice. We know that food or rice import accounting for over 200 million US dollars is not sustainable, given all the proper conditions that we have for agricultural productivity. So feed salon, as we know, is the first of the 5 big game changers. And I will invite us as the press to popularize this as a buzz as far as we could. And to let our people know that we have 5 big game changers. And the first is Feed Salon. And Feed Salon has such enormous potentials. We're not just looking at fighting hunger and having food self-sufficiency in Sierra Leone, but also how could we export so that we realize a lot of foreign exchange earning, and that could also constitute a critical economic driver for Sierra Leone. The second, as we know, is human capital development. We see the gains that this government made in the last 5 years within the context of human capital development. We've seen what we have done in basic and senior secondary education. When you look at the rate at which the girls finish primary and secondary education in Sierra Leone, it has surpassed, and I believe, almost every country in the sub-region. When we look at the pass rate, we met it at 55% around 2017, 2018. By the end of 2022, it was around 77%. Pass rate on PECE and NPSE also increased substantially. We've seen the gains and the dividends we continue to make in radical inclusion, having pregnant girls in school, and all of that. We've seen that the people who now sit to public examination by the end of 2022 had increased by 79%. So President Julius Maada Bio is saying that in the next 5 years, we don't just want to consolidate some of those gains, but how we also accelerate transformation in the next 5 years. And we should now be looking at skills development, especially for the young people. And that was the crux of his address when he went to Tanzania for the Africa Human Capital Heads of State Summit. How prepared, or how he is preparing the young people in Sierra Leone to be critical drivers for development. So within human capital development, we are focusing on skills development, skills that are relevant in the 21st century, so that our youth will have those relevant skills that are needed for 21st century industries. And indeed, very important within that context is digital skills. We know that the World Bank has given Sierra Leone a $50 million grant to pursue Sierra Leone's digital transformation roadmap. And so that is very important. The third for us is youth employment scheme. Government's ambition is that by the end of the second term, government should have generated around 500,000 jobs for our young people. So a lot of these will be cross-cutting. So there will be job opportunity, job creation opportunities within the pillar of Feed Salon. There will be job creation opportunities within human capital development. There will be job creation opportunities within even what the Ministry of Youth would be doing. The fourth one is public transformation. We know that no matter how ambitious your plans are as a political leadership, if you don't have the bureaucracy to align with you by mindset, by knowledge, by skills, by exposure, it will be difficult to achieve your political objectives. So in His Excellency's very wise determination, and also based on a lot of core studies done, but also all of us who interface with public servants and we've gone to ministries, we've seen the rate or the level of service delivery. We know that that is a very serious determination that has been made. And so public service transformation is very key as our fourth pillar. And the fifth pillar is tech and infrastructure. Again, as I spoke about human capital development, and one focal area being digital skills and digital exposure. So tech and infrastructure, we don't just need the roads to connect farms to markets. We don't just need the bridges. And we know how ambitious this government has been in the last 5 years in terms of roads, in terms of bridges. So we want to also deepen those gains and expand them as fast as we could. Ladies and gentlemen, so His Excellency President Julius Maada Bio has been very active and hard at work. And we recall recently he was in Rome for the United Nations Food Stock Taking Summit, building up on the summit that was at the UN in 2021. And one of the big takeaways and one of the fruits of that visit was the fact, and as a country we are grateful to the German government that the German government has made a pledge of 10 million euros towards our school feeding program. So given that and several other interventions, we hope to see the expansion of the school feeding program from about 800,000 beneficiaries to about 1.5 million, as His Excellency himself has so profoundly noted. I also spoke about the Dar es Salaam visit, and those visits are very important because once you have the president re-elected and he's conducting those visits, it is important for us to link those visits to the key priorities that we have as a government. So when we report, we are in a position to bring out the relevance and why His Excellency is traveling. One of the areas we also wish to report on is on the diversity of the cabinet. And it's important as our friends in the media to also bring out the utility of this so people start looking at what's new, what has changed. And it's important for our people to understand that in this cabinet that President Julius Maada Bio has appointed as per Section 56 of the Constitution, a lot of them are young people. Maybe it will be the youngest cabinet in Africa. When you look at our chief minister, maybe he's the youngest in the world, maybe the youngest in Africa. So we see the diversity not just in terms of the young people, and that should give hope to young people that if these young folks could be in cabinet, then if I could also just pay a little attention to what I do in school, to college education, to skills development, I would also go there someday. So it's also inspirational and motivational. And His Excellency has said, given the demographics, where you have people between 15 to 35 years constituting about 1/3 of the population, you can't afford to get it wrong. So it's important that the youth also are very represented in the cabinet. The women, and this is crystallizing the ambitions espoused in the Dewey Act, because we're talking about minimum 30% for elective offices and 30% as well for appointive offices. I know Casey was in Parliament when that act was passed. So now that we are implementing it, and when we had the first cabinet meeting here on Wednesday, and you see the number of women that were coming in, as like President said in Parliament, you get this swell of pride, Initially, when we go to international conferences, maybe the countries that will talk about the gains they have made on female representation, maybe Rwanda, South Africa, and maybe Senegal and Botswana. Sierra Leone would not even talk about female representation. So for us to have gotten 15% in the last parliament and now 30.4% in the sixth parliament, it's a notable improvement. And it's very important that we talk about this richness as well in the diversity that we have in cabinet. And again, going back to the 5 clusters that I spoke about, the appointment of somebody like Honorable Kande Yunkela, and with the presidential initiative for food security, which is Feed Salon, for climate change, And because if we have to do feeds alone, then we also have to have those interventions relating to our climate. It means we have to be climate resilient. So his office, that appointment is also very key and critical in actualizing the 5 priorities, as well as renewable energy, which is important for economic growth. 2 days ago, it pleased His Excellency the President to convene and preside over the first cabinet sitting. And cabinet looked at quite a good number of issues of national importance, including energy. It's important that we expand the scope of our energy generation, but also distribution and access. Renewable energy, we've seen the gains that are made from about 14% to about 35%. Government wants to expand on that. There are challenges relating to transmission, but it's also important that we also generate to full capacity. So government is very much focused on making sure that we deliver for the people, and that was His Excellency's message to the ministers, that we must deliver for the people who have elected us and the people that we serve in the positions of trust that we occupy. Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday there was an important development in Abuja with respect to the political situation in Niger. We recall now there have been 2 important extraordinary sessions. The first was in July 30, and yesterday, August 9, there was another extraordinary session under the chairmanship of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria. And there was a communique, our colleague Mike was there. There was a communique issued, and we must note some of the key decisions. But first, it is important to emphasize that ECOWAS would continue diplomatic engagements, and it has always made it clear that any use of force would always have been a last resort. And all of us are hoping and praying that there will be good sense, there will be reasoning, there will be the restoration of constitutional order, the release without conditions of President Bazoum and his family, and speedy restoration of constitutional order in Niger. We know President Bazoum was elected 2021, following the 2020-2021 elections. So to be elected in 2021 and then a year or a little over that, you are ousted. It does not situate favorably within the ambitions that we have for democracy in Africa. So ECOWAS took a position yesterday, and amongst them, directive has been given for the activation of the ECOWAS standby force and also the deployment of the standby force. I will not go into what that means, as we know that's for political and military consideration. But it is also important to note that President Julius Maada Bio joined his colleague heads of state at that summit, and Sierra Leone, as we know, has always aligned with the ECOWAS position when it comes to peace and security in the sub-region. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to also speak about something that is very, or touches and concerns all of us, and also for electioneering and the deepening of democracy in Sierra Leone. In His Excellency's address to the 6th Parliament, His Excellency announced the establishment of the Electoral Systems Review Committee. This has been widely acclaimed and favorably received locally and internationally. And a good number of international partners have been reaching out, but also making public their sentiments about this, and that it is a key step that His Excellency the President has taken. And this will be chaired by the Honorable Vice President for very obvious reasons. One, because of the pedigree that he has on electoral reforms, peace building in Africa and beyond, but also to demonstrate that government is lending a whole of government approach and ownership to this process. It's His Excellency's initiative, and it gives us an opportunity to examine the planning and the management of the 2023 elections. And it now gives the committee an opportunity to look at the legal regime, to look at the institutional framework, but also to look at operationalization. And electoral reviews are not new. For the 2002 elections, for example, I was in charge of voter education. And I know after the 2002 elections, there were reviews. So every election, like any institutional process, reviews are not out of order. You take a major activity, you get back, you introspect, you assess, what can I do better? What are the lessons learned? So this is not something that was crafted from the air. It is a defining institutional practice, whether it's private sector, it's public sector, and it's important for government, but also important for Sierra Leone. And we know that in this committee, we'll have government, we'll have development partners, we'll have civil society, we'll have professional bodies. So our expectation is that as they get together, they look at this critically, and it will help to strengthen electoral systems and institutions moving forward. So finally, what should we be expecting as a nation is the fact that first, His Excellency the President is very determined. He owes the people of Sierra Leone a debt of gratitude for the resounding mandate given him, and the government is hard at work. So what we are expecting is the fact that the building blocks for those 5 critical pillars I mentioned are now being laid. We expect to have very strong interministerial coordination and collaboration among them. And it is also important for those of us who may be like moral guarantors or pillars of democracy, as His Excellency the President has always said, including the media. It is our responsibility to also join forces with government to ensure that we consolidate the gains, we deepen democracy, we protect the peace and the unity of Sierra Leone. And to that end, His Excellency the President has made a very solemn pledge. So this is our maiden press briefing. This is the outline that we have for us. We will be informing the press as and when we are meeting based on the arrangements that I have made with the team. We want to see how we could be doing this maybe like twice a month. But as I said, this is the presidency. We don't have control over what happens. But as much as we can, we want to make sure that we forge this alliance with you. We want to make sure that the relationship with the media is very cordial. It is very fruitful. And this is the outline that we have for our maiden press briefing. And we want to invite a few questions. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My question is with regards to the electoral reform review. You said this is not the first time it has been done. I agree that this is not the first time it has been done, but this looks like a special committee. The one you are mentioning is an internal review committee. Is this not a slap on the face of the current ECSL team? And is it not giving credence to the views of the opposition and other observers, including some local and international observers? Thank you.
Good morning, Mohamed Jawad Nyale, Epic Radio. So my own question is regarding the Niger situation. I believe Sierra Leone's position is aligned with ECOWAS. We've condemned the coup and they're aligned with ECOWAS, whatever is being done. But I also want to bring this closer to us, to the MRU region, where neighboring Guinea, they're also, running a military government. Don't you think Sierra Leone's position on this Niger situation could upset our relationship with the Guineans? given that they have also expressed implicit support for the Niger situation since it's a military government. And it seems as if we have an inconsistent position when it comes to military overthrow in the region. In one hand, we are okay and we are partying with our Guinean neighbors, but with the Niger situation, we are following the dictates of ECOWAS.
Okay, thank you. First to Dixon on the electoral review. The electoral review, to every intent and purpose and by every stretch of the imagination, would be very complimentary. So the question that we would ask is this: had there not been any observer reports or concerns around the election, would it still have been wise to do a review? I would say yes, even without any observer report. If a decision had been taken to do a review, Sierra Leoneans will favorably receive it, because when you do a massive program like elections nationally, given its scope, its magnitude, I think it would still have been favorably received by anybody that having a review, a post-election review, to enable you to deliver better in the future would have been a welcome development. So the truth is, this review, the determination was made to do this review so that it gives us an opportunity to strengthen the legal regime, to look at institutional capacity, to also look at how we operationalize elections. It was not done as a response to any hue and cry raised by any quarter. It was not done in response to any observer report. It was done because it's a key and critical step. President Bio's determination is that we must get better each time we deliver a service. And by the next elections, we must be able to deliver better. So that's the bottom line for the electoral systems review. On Sierra Leone, on Guinea and Niger, Sierra Leone is not flip-flopping. It's important that what has taken place in Niger is an ECOWAS position, and Sierra Leone aligns with the ECOWAS position. What has happened in Guinea, Sierra Leoneans, and I believe the world also, saw the wisdom in President Julius Maada Bio's engagement, and that engagement primarily was to ensure, for sending the message that Guinea is Sierra Leone's immediate neighbor. And if anything happens there that is a threat to peace, it also affects and threatens Sierra Leone's peace and security. So it was in view of the Public Elections Act of 2022. What essentially the President is saying is, let's look at the planning and the management of the 2023 electoral cycle. Now, in the process, the committee now has leverage, has opportunity to look at the different facets of the electioneering period. It's now left with them. Is there anything they would want to look at in the law, for example, that they think should warrant some consideration? That's left with them. But President Bio is not calling for the review of the Public Elections Act 2022. On the stalemate in Parliament, I think President Bio spoke decisively on this, and I would want to be guided by his words. And he said, in an event where no political party has secured 2/3 majority in Parliament, what that means is dialoguing, negotiations, and I think that's what we need in any given Parliament where you have a bipartisan or multi-partisan system. It is important that you constantly negotiate and dialogue. And I think President Bio was very much clear on that. Do we like what's going on in Parliament? No, as government. President Bio is an ardent believer of democracy, and he believes that it's also important that we have a functioning opposition. We're looking forward to APC going back to Parliament and getting involved in the broad spectrum of governance. So somebody was reporting that an additional APC MD has gone to Parliament. So we want to see a lot more of that. And I think also within local councils, I think some orientation or something of the sort is happening. So we want to have that because we know when you have a functioning opposition, it also helps to hold government accountable, and it shows the diversity that we have in our political system. So let me take the opportunity to thank all of us for turning up at today's press briefing. And I want to thank you, and we look forward to closer collaboration. Thank you.